This is Hareesha from H&B Premier Tax and Accounting LLC. Today we are going to talk about another tax topic that a lot of people ask me about these days. Do I have to file a tax return? How do you decide, if you have to file a tax return or not? That is what we're going to talk in details in this topic. So before we get into the topic, a little bit about, me. I'm a CPA here in Long Island. We have a tax and accounting practice where we help a lot of businesses and individuals with their tax, accounting, and finance needs, and advise with various situations that they come across. So let's get into the topic. So how do you decide if you have to file a tax return or not? It primarily it depends on based on your income, right? So IRS says you have to look at your gross income for the tax year. In this video, we are specifically talking about 2020 tax year, which we are filing at this point. So your gross income is basically if you work in a job, you get a salary, that's part of your gross income, and then you have money in the bank and you get interest, that's part of your gross income. You have stocks that you own of a company, and then that company pays you dividends, that's part of your gross income, right? So first, let's see what is included in gross income and then what is not included. Generally, any income that you generate is part of your gross income, unless specifically IRS has not excluded that from the tax code. That includes whether you get it in the form of money, goods, or property. Generally, your wages, salary, bonuses, and if you do freelancing and then you get any kind of payments for your services, those are like part of your gross income. And then the gross income doesn't have to come from only within US. It could come from within US, or it could come from outside of the US. So some people say, I'm getting rentals or income from outside of US. Do I have to include that in my taxes, or do I have to even consider that as part of my gross income? Yeah, sure. So as long as if you're a US person, you're a citizen, green card holder, you file a US tax returns, you are subject to taxes on worldwide income. Now, also, what becomes part of your gross income is property sales. If you have any gain on a property sales, that includes sale of your primary house. That's become part of your gross income. And also generally, sale of a primary house has a certain gain exclusions for taxes. I'm not going to go into details that, but for this discussion, just say if you sell your house for a few $100,000, right? So that is part of your gross income. Now, and these days most people have their own businesses or side gigs. They do freelancing work. If you do side gigs and freelancing works, you're required to file a Schedule C. So if you have revenue on the Schedule C, not the net profit, not the revenue minus expenses, but top line revenue, that is considered part of your gross income. And then the same with if you have a rental property, you collecting rents from tenants, right? So the total rents that you collect, that goes on a Schedule F when you're filing the tax return, that becomes part of your gross income as well. Now, let's talk about what is not included in the gross income, the items that are excluded. That will be tax exempt, interest, dividends. Anytime you get interest and a dividend that are exempt from taxes, then that doesn't include in your gross income. Also, your Social Security benefits is generally not included in your gross income unless you're married filing separately, and then also you have other income above a certain limit, then part of your Social Security will be subject to taxes. So then at that point you have to include that as your gross income. But generally, if you don't have any other income, you only have Social Security benefits, then that's not included as your gross income. And also, let's say you have losses from the sale of properties, right? So you sold a house at a loss, or you sold some stocks at a loss. When you calculate gross income, you don't consider those losses. When you file taxes, you could take deductions for those losses, but when you consider your gross income, to decide whether you have to file a tax return or not, you don't take those losses into consideration. And then also something that new in 2020 are the stimulus payments, right? So if you got any kind of stimulus payments for individually or for your business, that is forgiven or you don't have to pay back, that will not be part of your gross income because that's not taxable. Any kind of tax-free income doesn't become part of your gross income. All right, so now we have an idea, we understand, we know what is gross income. So now let's go into the chart and see at what gross income level that you have to file a tax return. And also hang on, at the end I'm going to tell who should file a tax return even though they don't have to file a tax return, because there are certain credits, certain refunds that you will not get if you don't file a tax return. Now we understand what is gross income, right? So now once we know what is our gross income, then we have to look at what is our filing status, right? So if you are there are basically 5 filing categories that you could go under. First one is single. That means as it sounds like if you're filing a tax return by yourself. The second one is married filing jointly. You are married to someone and then you file a return together, combining both the husband and wife or both the spouse's income. The third one is married filing separately. You're legally married, but each person files a separate return. Then the fourth category is head of household. That means you have a dependent and then you're taking care of a household expenses, and then that's your category. And then the last one is qualifying widower. Qualifying widower is someone was married during the year, but during the year one of the spouse passed. So that's the fifth filing category. So depending on each filing category, your income limit depends, whether you have to file a return or not. Now, for example, if you are a single person and then also depending on your age, your filing, income limit, depends, right? So let's say you're a single person and you are below age 65, then as long as you have less than $12,400 in income, you don't have to file a tax return, right? So let's say your income goes above $12,400, then you have to file a tax return. So if you don't file, IRS could come and request you to file a tax return. Okay, so now what if a single person above 65 years of old, then your income could go all the way up to $14,050. As long as your income is below $14,050, you don't have to file a tax return. So as soon as it goes above $14,050, then you have to file a tax return. Now, most of these amounts are tied to the standard deduction, which is another topic which I'm not going to talk today. But some of them are not. But for the most filing categories, the filing requirement is tied to the individual standard deduction, right? I mean, not individuals. Each filing category is standard deduction. So the next filing category is married filing jointly. So if someone is married filing jointly and then both spouses are below age 65, they could have income all the way up to $24,800, and then still they will not have to file a tax return. Only time they will have to file a tax return is if their income goes above that number, right? So what if one spouse is above 65 and the other one is below 65? Then your filing requirement starts at $26,100. If both spouses are above 65 years of age, your filing requirement starts at $27,400. Now, this is an interesting category where someone is married filing separately, right? So regardless of your age, if you are category, you're married person and then you decide to file a separate return, as long as you have your income more than $5, you have to file a tax return. You must file a tax return. That's the requirement, right? Yes, you heard that right. It's just $5, okay? And then also there's a special condition under married filing jointly category as well. So if you are married filing jointly, but you did not live with your spouse in the same household, during the year or by the end of the year, or if you're married filing jointly and your spouse passed during the tax year, then as long as your income is above $5, then you have to file a tax return. You must file a tax return. So the next category is head of household. That also you could decide based on the age, 60 below 65 or above 65. If you're below 65, your income has to be only $18,650, and then above 65, your income has to be $20,000, $20,300 for you to have to file a tax return. All right. So final filing status is qualifying widower. So qualifying widower is a status where your spouse passed away during the tax year, and the next 2 years, as long as you meet certain requirements, you could choose to file as a qualifying widower, right? So I'm not going to go into details, but let's talk about filing requirement based on the income level. So if you're a qualifying widower below 65 years of age, as long as you have a $24,800 in income, you must file a tax return. Now, if you're above 65 years of age, and then you as long as your income is $26,100, you must file a tax return. So these are the filing categories and then the income limits that make you required to file a tax return for the tax year 2020. All right. So now this chart or this tree applies to a situation where that you are not a dependent on anybody else's tax return. So nobody else can claim you as a dependent. But if you claim as a dependent on somebody else's tax return, right? Let's say you're a child and you're 17 or 18 years old of age. You have income, but your income is not so high, and your parents, claim you as a dependent. So then it's a different, set of, rules that we have to look at, different set of chart that, we have to look at to see if you have to file a tax return or not. But if you're not a dependent on anybody else's tax return, this is generally, what you look at. All right, so let's go to the other chart. When you are a dependent, what decides whether you have to file a tax return or not. If you are a dependent on another person's tax return, so then whether you have to file a tax return or not depends on certain criteria. One is your unearned income. What is unearned income? That means your interest, dividend, capital gains distributions, things like that. And then also you have earned income. Earned income includes includes wages, tips, salaries, income for services that you provide, things like that, right? So then you have unearned income, and then you have earned income, and then you combine earned income and unearned income, then you get your total income. Okay, so then also you have to decide if you're a single dependent or married dependent, and then also you have to decide whether you are a single dependent above age 65 or below age 65, or married dependent above age 65 or below age 65, right? So that gets a lot of details in that chart, but I'm not going to explain one by one. I will leave the chart, 30 seconds on the screen, so you could take a look at it. And then also I will leave a link to, all these discussions that IRS has a publication, and then also instruction for, Form 1040. I will leave those links, if you want to study in detail and get more details, so you could go and, get those, resources. Now this is supposed to be overview, brief overview. You understand how we decide whether someone has to file a tax return or not. All right, so now we talk about generally if someone is not a dependent, how we decide if they have to file a tax return or not, and then someone is a dependent, how they have to file a tax return or not, right? Okay, so now the next category that we're going to talk about, regardless of your income, there are certain situations that you must file a tax return because of certain forms involved, or certain type of incomes involved, certain types of deductions involved, whatnot, right? So that's what we're going to talk about next. Let's look at other situations when you must file a tax returns regardless of your income. First situation is when you owe special taxes, such as alternative minimum tax, and the additional tax on qualified plans like IRS, etc. And then also you have employees as a household employees, and then you own household employment tax, and then also you work as a waitress or a restaurant worker, and then you have tips that you earn, but it wasn't reported on your W-2 from your employer side. So then you have to file a tax return and then declare those Social Security and Medicare taxes for the tips that you got. And then also the second category, if you received distributions from a health savings account or MSA plan, then you have to file a tax return. Third category, if you have net income from self-employment more than $400, right? What does that mean? Meaning like you work for a side gig and then you have to file a Schedule C. Like you work for Uber, or you do any type of side hustles that you earn income, and then you have your income, let's say $1,000, and your expenses like $300, so your net income is $700, right? So that's more than $400. So then in that situation, regardless of your gross income, you have to file a tax return. All right. So then if you have wages from a church or church control organization where they don't deduct Social Security and Medicare taxes, right? So this happens, when you're a clergy, you get paid, as a clergy. So if your income is more than $108.28, then you have to file a tax return, regardless of your gross income, limits. And then also, if you received, advance premium tax credit, so that means if you got a health insurance, from the marketplace, Obamacare marketplace, right? And then, they paid part of your premium as an advance premium, then you have to file a tax return. And then also you should receive a Form 1095A. So if you do not receive this, you have to go online and, download it from the health insurance marketplace and give it to your tax preparer so they know how to, prepare that reconciliation. So otherwise, IRS will not process your tax return, or they will send a correspondence saying that, this, information is missing. And also, if you are part of a health insurance plan where that, you got advance payments of health coverage credit, so then you have to file a tax return to reconcile those credits. And also, this one, probably doesn't apply to a lot of people, but, it might apply to some people, which is Section 965. It was a new law that came, from Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where, if you own shares or of a foreign corporation as a U.S. citizen or U.S. tax filer, you have to include, profits of that corporation in your taxes. There are a lot of rules and nuances, but you just need to know that it's out there. If this situation applies to you, you need to talk to your tax advisors or CPAs or attorneys to make sure that you include those income in your filing. All right. So now we talk about who must file a tax return, right? Depending on their filing, status, or depending on their income, or if any kind of special circumstances, applies to them or not. Now, let's talk about who should file a tax return, whether they have to file it or not, right? Whether they're required to file it or not, because these people, are in a position that, filing a tax return, it benefits them. For example, there are certain, credits or refunds IRS will not pay to individuals if they don't file a tax return. So let's talk about who probably better off filing a tax return even though they're not required to file a tax return, right? We discussed who has to, file a tax return, and then, now we're going to talk about who's better off filing a tax return, even if they don't have to file a tax return, right? So if these conditions or these situations apply to you, then you're better off filing a tax return, because you will get more money back, from the IRS as a way of a refund. Now, first situation is, if you qualify for earned income tax credit. Let's say, even though your income limits are, below the filing levels, but you have, children, and then IRS will give you, money back to you as a credit. So you're better off filing. And then also the same thing with the additional child tax, credit. You have kids, and then your income is, below a certain limit, and then you will get a refundable credit. And then American Opportunity Credit, that applies, when you pay to college or, higher education, and then, you don't have a, certain income, limits to file, but, if you have this situation, by filing, you will get a, a refundable credit. And then also premium tax credit, which I talked, before. Sometimes you could get that as an advance, but if you did not get it as an advance, by the time of filing a tax return, you could reconcile if your income is within a certain limit, and then you paid for health insurance in the marketplace, right? So then you could get a premium tax credit. And the same thing with health coverage tax credit. You participate in certain types of health insurance program, and then you could get a health coverage tax credit. Now, these two are new in 2020 tax year, because due to the pandemic and then stimulus, laws. Fifth one is recovery rebate credit. So if for whatever reason, if you didn't get your stimulus checks, right, you could file a tax return, and then IRS will look at your income for the year, and then if you qualify for the stimulus check, or you would have qualified for the stimulus checks based on your income, then you will get that as a refundable credit. And the same thing for credit for sick and family leave. All right. So this is what we discussed today. Who must file a tax return, and then based on the income, and then different set of criteria, and also who's better off filing a tax return, even if they don't have a requirement to file. All right. So if you have any specific questions, or any special situation that applies to you, please, get in touch with your tax advisor or CPA or an attorney, because, this is general information. I'm addressing everybody, not, any specific person or a specific situation. And also, if you want to get in touch with us, please feel free to, give us a call or reach out to us, through our, website, through an email or, social media channels. Until I see you in the next video, have a good day. And take care of one another, and also please remember to subscribe and give a thumbs up to this video, so that this way anybody else that interested in this topic will get to see this. Thank you. Until I see you, have a good day.